Not at all, because the President Karzai was elected for his second term in accordance with the due requirement of the Afghan constitution and in accordance with the electoral process. There was fraud in the elections, of course, and President Karzai himself acknowledged that and condemned it. But all the fraudulent votes were cancelled, and in fact, many more of his legitimate votes, unfortunately, were thrown out in bulk. But even still, he came very close to winning in the first round, and then he agreed to do a second round. But obviously, you know that one of the candidates withdrew, and therefore he became de facto the winner. So there isn't. I mean, if legitimacy is about winning elections, then he has won elections according to law. And now there is, I think, a sense of pessimism that exists in the West about the Afghan elections and about the political context in Afghanistan is not consistent with how Afghans see the situation. If you go to Kabul, to Afghanistan, anywhere in Afghanistan, and you just ask a question about who is the president and who is the legitimate and whether he is legitimate or not, they would just tell you that President Karzai is the legitimate president of Afghanistan. Well, it's not just the pressure from the international community. I mean, President Karzai has a mandate for another 5 years, and he has to do a number of things, and corruption or tackling corruption is one of them. He has to really build up the security forces of Afghanistan to make sure that they're able to take responsibility from the international forces in 5 years' time, or even less. He has to build up an economy that's not yet as strong as it should be. He has to complete the reconciliation process with the Taliban. He has to build a regional consensus about that for stabilization. But he also has to tackle the corruption issue. So and he already has a strategy for how to tackle that. He will present some plans, some options at the London conference at the end of January. But he needs support, because corruption is not just something that the president can do by announcing a strategy or taking certain measures. It's a systemic issue. It's an issue about the bureaucracy in Afghanistan, and it's not just within the government as well. So it has to be done in partnership, and I think the international community, I am aware, is committed to work with us on this. Well, it had a refreshing. I mean, I do not necessarily share the obviously or the view that some of those people who were rejected should have been rejected. There were some good people there, but as well as an act of parliament, it was a very refreshing act to do. It increased the credibility of the parliament. It increased the credibility of institutions in democracy in Afghanistan. And I think we're glad to have that kind of a lively institutional arrangement. Obviously, from the president's point of view, it's important to have a government in place sooner rather than later, because there's important work to do. There's the London conference coming up. So it would be good to have. But the parliament, according to the constitution, has the right, and if they take the right to the full extent, is their prerogative. One of the reasons that we haven't yet succeeded in Afghanistan in the past 8-9 years now is not so much a failure of Afghanistan. It's not so much a failure of the international community and the sense of how strong it is. But it was a failure of the strategy that we were working on. And I think what we are having now as a new strategy under President Obama's leadership and under his military team. There's a strategy now that is already producing results. And this strategy is based on a number of elements. The most important thing is the shift in focus from hunting down small groups of Taliban here and there in villages, in towns of Afghanistan, to actually protecting civilians. This is something, a very key element that's been lacking in the strategy, and basically lies at the heart of why we've not been very effective. Protection is the most important thing we have to provide, and that's now being provided. The second element is obviously the focus on the regional dimension of the terrorism threat, including Pakistan. That's another important area that was neglected for a very, very long time, and now it's being focused on. The third focus is on building up Afghan institutions. That's another area that saw a lot of underinvestment. In Iraq, in 4 years, they built an army of 250,000 strong. In Afghanistan, it's been, we've been at it for 9 years now, and we only have 90,000. So there was a severe underinvestment in building up institutions. That's why we're not yet able to take our responsibility. So these are very important elements of this new strategy, counter-insurgency or counter-terrorism, whatever you call it. The important thing is that these are very critical elements, and I think I'm glad to say that they are now in place. General McChrystal is a really capable general that leads this effort in Afghanistan on the NATO side, but on our side as well, we're fully part of this, and I'm absolutely certain that this is going to produce a result in 2010. Yes. Military strength, military build-up is important in its own right. It has to be done, and it is being done. But when we reach a point when we're dominant on the military front, we have to remember that this is not a war of elimination, that we cannot eliminate everyone. In fact, an important part of the strategy should be to make sure that that people who are part of this destructive process, for whatever reason that is, that they also see a different alternative. And this is now possible, because for a long time this reconciliation was not possible because there were regional dynamics that did not encourage reconciliation. It was also not possible because they were internally within Afghanistan. There wasn't a lot of coordination. Afghan government, the international community, the international forces were not really reading from the same page on this reconciliation issue. Today there is a consensus. There's a consensus between Afghanistan and the international community. There is also support from regional countries about this. So I think there's a lot of potential, and President Karzai has reconciliation as one of its top priorities in 2010, and you will see soon some really tangible results. Well, you see, the context in Afghanistan is evolving very fast. So by 2011, the situation is really going to look quite different anyway. There is the new American troops coming in already. A large part of them have already come to Kandahar, and there is already a shift in terms of responsibility between the Canadian and the American forces. In the rest of Afghanistan, the same is happening in different ways. Afghan forces are really, really keen. We as the Afghan government are really keen that it should, at the end of the day, it should be the Afghans who should have the responsibility, not Canadians, not Americans, not any other troops. Because it's our country we should be responsible for, and we're really, really grateful for what Canada has done, what the Americans are doing, and what all other countries are doing. So I think we're grateful for Canada's role, but in terms of the impact, I mean, I think it will have a political impact, of course, if they withdraw. It will have an impact on NATO or on other partners, particularly on Britain, on countries like Netherlands, like Denmark, who have troops in the south. They will have an impact. But from our point of view, the important thing is to say we're really grateful for the sacrifices of the Canadian people, the Canadian troops. We're grateful for their assistance. And whatever decision Canada makes at the end about their mission in Afghanistan we will respect that decision, and we will remain grateful. But we would like to see Canada continue to support Afghanistan in whatever way that they think is possible for them.
Okay.
Well, if the troops and when the troops are withdrawn from Afghanistan, or we would like to see Canada remaining a very strong supporter of the stabilization and economic development of my country. In terms of the economic development, I have received assurances already from Canada that's going to remain a focus for Canada. There is going to be increased economic assistance. There is one area that we Afghans would like to see Canada continuing to help, and that is in the area of training our institutions, our army and the police. That is something that we don't know yet. It will, I think, emerge in the next few months whether Canada is willing to maintain a role in terms of providing training assistance to our security institutions. That's an extremely valuable element for us as far as we're concerned, and I think Canada as part of NATO would be an ideal partner with us, and we hope that will be considered as an option.
Well, thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to talk to you.